Hi, if you're new here, hello, I'm Mystonia, and today I'm going to play and review 15 games that you can try right now because they're completely free. A lot of free games can be a bit hit or miss, especially with things like microtransactions or not being the best quality, but after playing through all of these, I was actually surprised how many of them were really good. With that being said, let's get into it. This game is one of the weirder ones I've played in a while. I actually stumbled across it when I was making one of my other videos, 30 Weird Games, which I'll link in the description if you want to watch that one next, and after seeing it was free, I just kind of had to give it a go for this video. Enna Dream Barbecue is a really weird, surreal exploration game where you play as this character called Enna, and by the way, if I ever mix this up and say Ina in this, just pretend that I didn't. You're dropped into these strange, dream-like worlds with no clear explanation of what is going on, and your main goal is to find this boss that everyone keeps talking about, but the game doesn't really guide you in a normal way. Most of the gameplay is about talking to different characters and doing random tasks or jobs that they give you. These can be anything from solving puzzles to navigating weird maze-like places or using strange tools to fix your problems, so each time you speak to someone you really have no clue what's going to happen next. The animations and the cutscenes in this game are top tier. They have this sort of absurd over-the-top style to them, and if you've ever watched them like insane Japanese reality TV shows, this game really mimics that feeling. It's just got a sort of randomness to the whole thing that doesn't come across as cringy or forceful, for a lack of a better word. Everything feels like it has a place in the world regardless of how absurd it is, and because of that, I as the player feel like I want to continue looking around and finding the next weird thing to look at. I do think part of this is probably because it's already had its time to find its style and what works with it, because it's actually based off a YouTube series before being turned into this game. On the topic of cutscenes, there's also voice acting in the game for all of the characters, and I will say I think they're really well done and just add an extra layer of personality to the characters.
Pardon me, my head hurts so much. Do you have any coffee?
I do think a lot of this game is listening to long, unskippable dialogue between Enna and the other weird people in the world, so if you're not one for listening to lots of dialogue, you might want to skip this one, or at least just prepare yourself for that. I noticed that some of the cutscene interactions with people when you're getting a quest can go on for a good 5 minutes or so. Again, this isn't a fault of the game, I just went in and didn't really for some reason expect there to be long, unskippable dialogue in the game. I actually didn't really expect there to be full voice acting in it, so it's a great surprise. It's just in case you go in and you wasn't really expecting it, just to prepare yourself for it here. It's important to note that this game is the first chapter in what's going to be a much larger game, and although this first chapter is free, the next installments will be paid. That being said, I honestly think that it's great. I see this chapter as almost a free demo to another game, but take that with a pinch of salt, because what you get for free is basically a whole short experience within itself. The animations, the creativity, the game design, sound design, voice acting, it all deserves to be paid for, and the fact they even gave this first chapter for free is huge. I know so many people will be excited and happy to pay for the next releases in this game. I know I am. Overall, Enna Overall, Enna Dream Barbecue is a super surreal experience where you get to explore bizarre worlds, do odd jobs for weird characters, and it was a really fun experience. If you're into more weird and out there games, give this one a go. It's completely free and it did its job of getting me hooked and wanting to play the next release in the series whenever they come out. 20 Small Mazes is a game where the title explains exactly everything you need to know. The menu right off the bat with this game is really unique. There's a dot in this maze that you can move around to certain sections in order to get the options menu. There's also little circles with a question mark in that you can hover over that tells you the mechanics of the game. So rather than it being a normal menu screen, right from the beginning is kind of like the tutorial too. We move the maze out of the way and that gives us our second one where we can select our first new game slot and start the real game. In here, we just have all of the mazes ready to go on the screen. We can drag them around, move them out the way, we can click on them to pick which ones we want to attempt, and I kind of just like how this has all been designed. It's really simple in the visuals, but each maze being its own little card was really cool to start off with because I was like, wow, there's so many to choose from, and they're all super unique looking, and I can tell you right now, each one is definitely different from the last. I started off with the first maze that came up, and this one was super easy. The gimmick is kind of that the maze is foldable, so you can actually jump from one half of the maze to the other by folding the maze itself and moving yourself, unfolding it and then moving and repeat. I solved that one super quickly and moved on to the next. This one is a cloudy day one, which essentially there are clouds on the maze. Each one you go through will teleport you to another random cloud. Despite this one also being relatively simple, I still felt really accomplished with all of these earlier mazes because it felt really fun to learn what each maze's gimmick was and how to actually solve it. I'm just really impressed at how they managed to keep this game from feeling rather repetitive by making each maze have its own thing that makes it unique, and the fact that they managed to do that for 20 different ones is actually really impressive. Despite each puzzle being different from the last, it's still really easy to pick up what the game is putting down with each one of them, and I was actually so immersed in solving these puzzles that I almost burnt my food because I turned my alarm off for it and I just wanted to keep playing the game so much that I kept telling myself, oh, just, one more maze, and then 2 mazes later I was like, oh yeah, I should probably go grab my food, which is kind of just a testament to how good this game was and how much I was enjoying it. It's definitely way more challenging than I thought it would be based on initial thoughts, and some of the puzzles really require you to give them multiple goes, as you can get yourself stuck or locked or not be able to proceed any further with it if you don't plan out your moves in advance. The challenge is definitely what made the game more engaging the further on I got with it. Overall, it's just a very creative puzzle game that takes a simpler concept and just runs wild with it, and if you like chill puzzle games, I'd definitely say give this one a go. The Werecleaner is a really funny stealth game where you play as this guy named Kyle who works as a janitor, but he's also secretly a werewolf. The problem is he has to work the night shift while people are still around, so he's trying to do his job without anyone finding out what he really is. The main gameplay is about sneaking around an office building, cleaning up messes like a normal janitor, but also avoiding the co-workers, because if someone sees you in your werewolf form, you end up killing them, which just creates even more mess that you have to clean up and avoid more people spotting you whilst you're cleaning up that one. And if you do, you have to kill them, and then there's more mess, and yeah, you kind of get the picture. The game introduces you to the basic mechanics of the game whilst you're not in werewolf form by putting you into the office building and making you clean up 2 relatively easy to find messes. Throughout this, there is a timer going down on the side of the screen, and even though I still had over 5 minutes left, I was just panicking to get out on time, and I could just tell later on that it was going to get so much more chaotic when you know there's no time to clean everything up. At the end of the level, it gives you a little score out of 5 stars based on your time and if you got caught by anyone. Speaking of, we get a little cutscene that shows us that for the next week, all staff have to work the night shift, and because our character is in fact a werewolf, even though a really cute one at that, and we have rent due soon, we have no other options but to work. This time, in order to do our daily tasks, we have to avoid being spotted by any of the other staff members. I just think this is a really great idea for a game. I was absolutely panicking about the people, and in a way I guess you can just kill them if you want to and take the L on the ranking at the end, but I think part of the fun is sneaking around them and the tension that builds up when you're waiting for a character to leave an area you need to clean in, waiting to see if they're gonna walk in your direction or the opposite. In between levels, there's these little scenes where you talk with Daryl, the security guard of the building. Luckily for us, he can't see us and actually talks through the intercom instead. But these scenes are always just comedic as Daryl thinks he's onto something suspicious in the office, and the anxiety-ridden wolf that we play as is freaking out, trying not to act suspicious. I just find these scenes really fun, and it adds a little bit of story to the game too to break up in between the levels. I remember feeling excited to see where it goes and if Daryl ever suggests a werewolf or gets close to figuring us out. With each level, there's new mechanics added. For example, we can throw paper balls in order to distract staff who will pick them up and take them to the nearest trash can, essentially moving them out the way. The next level, we get the option to capture up these critters in a bag, then throw them at people in order to blind them so we can run past. Overall, I just think it's a really simple idea for a game that's executed to such a high standard, from the little mini story that goes alongside you and the security guard, to the actual polish of the game itself in its design. I really recommend this game if you're a fan of those chaotic party games like Overcooked, but also just to try out for a night because it's free. It definitely kept me entertained with a really enjoyable experience. Hi, Mystonia from the edit here, just popping in to say I'm currently on the road to 5k subscribers, and it would mean the absolute world to me if you're enjoying this video to give it a like and subscribe to the channel to help me reach that goal, but also to join our little indie game community. Thank you so much for listening, and back to the video. Starfetchers is a fast-paced action game with just a weird story about gangs and crime. You follow two main characters who start out as low-level nobodies and are part of a gang called the Thorns, trying to climb their way up and become the most notorious group around. The game is mostly focused on combat, but it's kind of unique because you actually control your character's sword with your mouse. So instead of pressing a button to attack, you're actually swinging the weapon yourself, trying to hit enemies precisely whilst dodging their attacks at the same time. Upon loading the game, we start as a character who's working at a supermarket. We take out the trash, and I decide to have a wander around before heading back into the store, and I think this is really where I get a feel for the tone of the game. There's some kids acting as scouts, and they're swearing at me, saying they want to get their public nuisance badge. There's some shady looking guys telling me to leave, and a murder that's literally happened at the end of our road. Upon entering back into the shop, our store manager tells us that he's sending us to the meat dungeon, and gives us a stick to whack pigs with. Based on the weirdness of this game so far, I'm starting to think that this isn't actually an analogy and we're actually going to be going into a meat dungeon. And I was kind of right. We go in and we start hacking at pigs to learn our controls. At first, it would seem like we're in just a normal looking meat fridge, except the environment starts to become a little bit weird and we see this giant eye poking in from the wall. When we leave, there's more trash to take out, and this is where we meet our new character, Zambezi. She asks us if we want to join her group, stopping robbers and fighting in the city. Our character says no, except 2 seconds later, robbers crash into the store, killing our manager, and we get to play as the lass as we dodge bullets and slice them with our sword. This is the first taste of combat in the game, and oh my gosh, it's so satisfying. The way it works is by holding down left click and moving your mouse around. You can also kick mid-air by using right click, and shift lets you slow down time to dodge bullets. This is definitely one of those levels that you're going to try over and over again really quickly until you get it, and when you do, it's just chef's kiss. The art style and the aesthetic of the game is just stunning and really nails what it's going for. It's all pixel art, but done in a little bit more of a realistic way, if that makes sense. Another touch I love is when you pause the game, it actually pulls back from the game itself onto this TV screen, and there's this character flicking on a remote to move the cursor over the settings. I think it's just a really neat settings page that adds a little bit more character to the game than just simply pressing like an opening settings tab. One thing I will say about the game is, although it's free, it's technically sort of like a free demo or a chapter 1, if you will, that was supposed to be a much larger game. This released in 2020, and then 4 years later there was only one small DLC titled Pork Belly, and it was a short Punch-Out style game, mainly released as a way to earn some money and support the devs with their creation of episode 1 for Starfetchers. From a search online, there was this Kickstarter update post for the game that I found that came out on the 23rd of December 2025, so not too long ago, talking about the development and how episode 1 is progressing, which does show that despite the long wait, it hasn't completely been abandoned yet. Working on games is really tough, especially if you're a small team, so I'm actually really rooting for the devs on this one, that they have a great game and that the concept is fun, and I genuinely wish the best with development in the future release of this game. Sheepy, a short adventure, is an indie platformer where you play as this abandoned plush sheep that comes to life. The game is mostly about exploring and moving through different areas by platforming. This will start off pretty simple, but you slowly unlock more movement abilities that let you reach new places and get through harder sections of the game. There isn't really much dialogue or direct storytelling. Instead, you figure out what's going on just by exploring the environment and seeing what happened to the world, and piecing things together yourself by finding notes or sound journals. First of all, the visuals of this game are stunning. It's this pixel art style, but with dynamic moving backgrounds and layered art in the foreground and background, and lighting added over the top of any light sources just to add dimensions and textures to the game. Even things like blurring out rooms that you aren't in and bringing them into focus as you get closer makes the game look way more cinematic than just simply being pixel art. Right off the bat, the game is giving this sort of magical tone to it, something akin to like Ori and the Blind Forest, with this orb of magic light coming in and bringing life to this toy sheep nearby. When we run across this piano, it makes a little noise, and it's just small attentions to details in the game that makes it feel a little bit more whimsical at first. But then there is a darker undertone with this rundown environment that we're in, and that becomes even more prevalent when we drop down and see a skeleton with blood smearing the walls. An audio note telling us that something dangerous happened, which switches the mood of the game entirely. Shortly after this, we meet our first boss. I say this every time, but I don't really research games heavily before before going into them because I think it gives me a bit more of a subjective take. And with the title of this game and like looking a little bit at the trailer, I thought it was going to be a cozy game. So I was actually really pleasantly surprised when I found out it has platforming boss fights in it. In this fight against Patches, you have to use the environment with these spikes to bait him into dash attacking you, dodging his attacks instead and him going flying into the spikes and taking damage. When we defeat him, we get the ability to double jump. I'm feeling pretty chuffed with myself. I didn't expect him to come back into a full chase sequence as we platform through the environment trying to escape him. Genuinely, I was on the edge of my seat with this gameplay and it was really enjoyable. I also, again, just have to comment on the level of polish visually here. I mean, look at how stunning this cutscene is. Throughout the game, there's these little audio logs and journal entries / notes that we can find that were left by assumably the staff of this abandoned facility that we're traversing. These notes give us a bit more lore of the world and the people in it, but also act as a bit of an atmospheric tone to the game too, with this note stating that any personnel must have their equipment authorized before heading down to the zone that we are literally going down to. We're going down to. We're going down to. The zone we're going down to. Anyway, reading this audio note actually made me feel a little bit tense because I'm set up for it being a dangerous area. Eventually I come to a moment where you get this fast dash boost that stays as long as you don't hit something, and what follows is a sonic moment as you jump and dash around the environments going super fast, and honestly, that was an absolute blast to play, like genuinely a really fun mechanic to implement in this game, and I just kept praying for more segments where I could use it because I had so much fun with it. The game has so many creative ideas in this regard, and it means that the entire thing feels really fresh and not like you're doing the same platforming things over and over again. Just when it begins to get a little stagnant, the game says, here's a new mechanic you can mess around with, or here's a boss battle, or here's some lore, and I really love that. Whilst exploring, I also found a music disc, so I do know there's something in this game for people who like collecting items or trying to 100% it with all the achievements. I don't want to spoil the story in any way either, but it's actually really great on that regard too. It had me shouting out loud to myself whilst playing it because of some of the more emotional or intense moments that paired with the final end platforming section, and it was just some of the coolest gameplay I've played in a little while. I don't know if you can tell, but I really recommend that you play this one if you like what you're seeing because you will not regret it one bit. This is one that I imagine, based on this question mark right here, is going to be turned into a full game at some point in the future, and if it is, that is something I would 100% be buying. But for those of you who want a short 1-hour experience that is great in every aspect, I really suggest getting this game and playing it straight away. I would have paid for this small version of the game too, let alone it being free, so I can't wait to see what's next from these guys. DOGWALK is a really short, chill exploration game where you play as a dog walking around a snowy forest with your little kid following behind you. The main thing you do is explore this open area, including things like the campsite, forest paths, and frozen ponds, whilst helping the kid find items to build his snowman. You can also kind of play however you want to. You can be a good dog and you can help guide the kid around properly, or you can just run around and drag them everywhere. Yeah, it's not really much more to the game than that. Not only is this game free, but it's also open source, meaning anyone can have a look into the code and learn from it, which I think is really cool. The game is made in Godot and Blender, which are also free open source softwares, so this game actually becomes a really accessible tool for anyone who's looking into making games too. The game was made by Blender Studio, and it's one of their projects that was specifically made in order to test and create a pipeline between Blender and Godot to make the asset and level creation process as seamless as possible, which is just super cool. I definitely recommend looking more into this if you're someone who wants to make games and are looking for a completely free way to do so. Onto the game itself though, it's just super cozy. You can tell that that was the aim that they were going for, and if you're having one of those days where you're not sure what to play and are just a bit stressed out to commit to anything properly, this is a small 20 minutes one that's going to take your mind off anything else going on. The star of the show really is the environments and the animations, as the gameplay is not at all really intense. You're just playing a walking simulator. The thing that keeps you interested is the various little animations. There's different idle ones, and ones where you're having little treats thrown at you, and ones where the kid is tripping up because you're pulling on your lead a little too much. I just thought these animations were really cute to look at. Controls wise, I felt it was a little clunky. I loaded into the game using mouse and keyboard, and the way it worked was by moving your mouse in the direction you want your dog to go. If you want him to stop, you just move your mouse on top of the dog and he'll stop walking. I found it a little clunky because instead of just using WASD to move him, it would mean if your mouse wasn't on the dog particularly, he would just kind of keep walking, or sometimes if you went a bit too far, he would turn around and start walking backwards because he's constantly moving. You only stop him if your mouse is on top of him. I opened the controls to see if I could fix this somehow, and the first thing that came up in the settings was controls for a controller instead of a mouse, so switching to that made this experience 10 times better as you just use the joystick to move around. I only mentioned to let you all know that if you decide to play this game, just off the bat use the controller because it makes the experience more fun. Oddly enough, one of my favourite things about this game was the credit sequence. It just shows off a little bit of the behind the scenes of what went into actually making the game, from all of the smaller physical crafty pieces that were made, like the trees, to them being scanned and imported into Blender, all of the animations and pre-development planning, and it's just really cool to see how the game I had just played had come together physically. Overall, this is just a perfect short cozy game for anyone who's looking to try it out. If you like stuff like a short hike where the gameplay is more exploratory but are prepared for something even more hands-off, then I do think this one will be up your alley. And again, for free, it's definitely worth it, with a high level of polish, just cute, fully rounded story, and beautiful design to play for just a night. In the Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, you'll play as a brand new intern on the Mirage Express. For your first shift, you'll be hosting for Amy's birthday, and she's hosting a murder mystery party with her friends. However, when you recognize that Sonic actually appears to be murdered, it is up to you and Tails to interrogate the cast of suspects to find out what really took place. First of all, some positives with the game. I think all of the character drawings are just so cute. Each character has different poses that they're shown in, and there's also various background drawings, and all in a really neat style that's just very pretty to look at. The game is definitely more of a visual novel than mystery, but I'll get into that a little bit more later. If you're someone who enjoys visual novels and are a fan of the Sonic universe, I think for free you're gonna absolutely have a blast with this one. It's really casual too, there's not a lot about it that was difficult, so if you're someone who wants a chiller murder mystery game and are not wanting to exhaust your brain too much, this is ideal. As someone who doesn't know a lot about Sonic, I actually like that each character had their own chance to shine. I had no clue that some of these characters even existed, and I did get to have a sense of their personality in this game and therefore get to know them better because it didn't just focus on the main characters that everyone knows. Each person got their own spotlight. The game is kind of written like a fanfiction, I can't lie. There's like moments where my character will have an aside with their thoughts and it's like, "Whoa, is that Sonic the Hedgehog?" And I fucking hate it. Once you notice the writing is in this style, it's so hard to not stop noticing it, but I do think that is kind of part of the charm of the game, and it's intentional if that makes sense. It's almost like they're trying to parody games that are more poorly written and just those cringy, like, bad pun moments in those games. The game actually released on April Fool's Day, which just adds to the fact that the whole game doesn't take itself seriously and is self-aware that it's a bit of a joke game, which actually really works in its favor. When you're interrogating someone, you can actually select a piece of evidence that relates to what you may be interrogating them for. For example, in the opening section, Amy is acting pretty suspicious and we're locked in a room. We ask if Amy can smash us out, but she deflects the question. Upon seeing a crack in the bookshelf blocking our exit and the broken stick hidden behind Amy, I decipher that she has already attempted to escape. Interrogating her, I bring up the evidence of the smashed bookshelf, which she tries to deflect. In order to properly interrogate her, we get a little minigame pop up. This is where we play as Sonic on a old game cartridge, and we have to almost jungle run / subway surfers, depending on how old you are, move around spikes on the floor, collecting enough coins to pass through the check and continue our interrogation correctly. I actually really like this section because it just adds a little bit of variety in what is otherwise a very dialogue-heavy story that follows the same path. It is super forgiving, however. If you mess up and fall off the edge or you don't collect enough coins, the character you're interrogating just says a line and then you get to try the minigame infinitely until you pass. This is because the game is super linear and you have to finish this story beat before moving on, so there's not really any stakes behind the game, but I will get more into that in a little bit. I have played a lot of detective games like this one before, but one of which that comes to mind is Tangle Tower. However, that one seemed more detective and puzzle focused, where you really have to think to put together clues. You can move around different rooms and find new clues and loop back to put them together. The system in place for interrogating someone is different Sonic 2, where you have this almost fill in the blank with different statements and clues in order to piece it together yourself. In this game, however, there's just multiple choices of 3, and oftentimes there are joke answers in there, which means you can sort of guess what's going on without having figured it out yourself beforehand. Now, I do want to state that this doesn't mean there's anything wrong with this game itself. I do think the target is maybe towards younger audiences, so I absolutely have no issues with it being a little less heavy on the actual detective work and more a casual visual novel with your favorite cast of characters. I only want to mention this point in this video in case you're thinking about playing it and go in like me thinking it's going to be more puzzle focused and have more agency as the player because of that. This game just really pushes you down one story path as we follow Tails the detective wherever he goes, making the game super linear. Again, just noting that this is a free game, so for what you get it's actually great, and I just wanted to mention for people's expectations. Overall, I think regardless of if you're a fan of the Sonic universe or not, you'll have a fun time with this one. If you're not a fan of visual novels, I would steer you towards some of the other games on this list because it is just a couple hours of pretty much reading, but regardless, a really fun game nonetheless. Sky Children of the Light is a really cozy exploration-based game where you play as this small character called a Child of the Light, and your whole goal is to travel through this world and bring light back to it. As you go, you will explore different areas, flying around them using a cape, which is a big part of how you explore. As you move through the game, you'll collect light to upgrade your ability to fly further and reach new places. Most of the gameplay is about exploring and finding these lost spirits, and when you find them, you relive little memories from the past. The story itself is kind of vague on purpose, but the idea is that the world used to be full of light and life, and now it's fallen apart. You're basically helping restore it by guiding spirits and bringing light back to the sky. Starting off with some positives, visually the game is going for this low poly design similar to something like Journey, with its environments that feel serene, lots of waving grass fields, blue skies with clouds, stone buildings. It creates just a really calming space. This, alongside with things like the sound design, make for a cozy gaming experience. Just a touch further on the sound design, I genuinely think that this is really good. Obviously taking inspiration from anime-esque audio that's very Ghibli reminiscent. It has this whimsical tone about it that feels light and airy, mainly piano and strings. And yeah, I just really enjoyed listening to it whilst exploring around. Unfortunately with this game, I noticed there was quite a lot of visual glitches throughout the game, and I don't just mean here and there, they appear quite often. When characters are moving or being able to walk into objects, there's black flashes on the screen, being able to run around in the background of cutscenes. I would just say that the game is a little bit unpolished in that regard. Characters will move not in the most smoothest of ways, like they'll pop into position or move in ways that just feel a little bit off. A reminder here though, this is a free game, so some of the issues that I've mentioned or mentioned later on are up for debate with each person, whether you think it's something that's permissible for you to be able to play the game or not. If it's not something you're okay with, there are absolutely other games on this list that I've mentioned that are insanely polished and worth your time. But once again, to give you guys a fair review, I am just mentioning these things so you're aware of it if you decide that you would want to play this game for yourself. There is a multiplayer element to this game. When you're wandering around the world, you'll actually see other people as grayed out children. Holding a candle up to them lets you see what they actually look like, but as far as I can tell, the game itself didn't have any multiplayer aspects to it. Like, I could do all of the story that I wanted to without the need for another person. I think the co-op is just an optional thing, so you can have a friend to run around with. That being said, I do think it's super cool to see everyone else just going about their business, doing their own thing. Someone even asked me to be their friend and I accepted, and I could hold their hand and run around with them, leading them to places. And that was actually a really cute interaction, even if I didn't know who they were. The game lets you give them a nickname so you can recognize them, but there's something kind of sweet about knowing that this was another human being at the end of a different computer without the pressure of having to talk to them or speak to them, etc. On that topic though, when I press T, a little mic appears, but nothing really happens with that, and unless every person I met was being quiet, I don't really know what was up with it. I tried to check if my mic was off in the settings so I could maybe somehow get it to work and speak with people, but they didn't even have a settings for the audio or for the mic. When I did look in the settings though, when you press T, it does say it's speech to chat, but I don't think it worked at all. I kept pressing T and speaking and nothing happened. This is when I found out in the settings you can actually type to talk. I wouldn't have found this out if I wasn't looking for the mic settings, since the game doesn't actually tell you this, and nobody I met was using this. So I don't think anyone else knew that you could actually talk to people in the game if you typed out. Overall, Sky Children of the Light is a visually beautiful and atmospheric exploration game that focuses heavily on the mood and a shared experience with other players. While it does have some technical roughness around the edges and some unclear systems, the core experience remains a very calming and unique one, especially if you enjoy more meditative and chill games. Fallout Shelter is a management simulation game where you're put in charge of your own underground vault in a post-apocalyptic world. You'll take on the role of the Overseer, and your responsibility is to build, manage and maintain the vault while keeping its residents alive and as content as possible. The game revolves around balancing three main resources. You've got power, water and food. To generate these, you need to construct corresponding rooms and assign dwellers to them. Each room benefits from specific stats. For example, power rooms rely on strength, so assigning dwellers with higher strength stats will significantly improve production efficiency. This becomes really important because if any of these resources drop too low, problems will start to arise. There'll be things like rooms breaking down and catching fire, or being invaded by things like rad roaches, and your dwellers will have to quickly respond to prevent the situation from spreading to other rooms. As your vault expands, you can build additional rooms to keep up with demand, but progression is partially gated by population. Certain rooms won't unlock until you reach a specific number of dwellers. For example, you won't be able to build a med bay until you have at least 14 dwellers, meaning early on you really have to manage carefully without access to healing facilities. Unlike many management sims, the game runs entirely in real time with no pause or speed up options, so production and traveling around and other actions will all continue on a real world timer, which is a design choice tied to its original mobile release. Because of this, the experience can actually feel a bit more like an idle game at times, because you'll often be waiting for resources to accumulate, dwellers to level up, or caps to come in so you can expand further. Personally, I really enjoyed this. I found that it made the game a bit more relaxed and easy to dip in and out of whilst working on other things, though it might not appeal as much if you're looking for something more actively engaging like a proper management sim. While it could potentially translate well to other platforms like the Switch or Steam Deck, it does feel its most natural as a phone game. Another key feature is sending dwellers out into the wasteland, and when exploring they'll encounter events such as fighting animals or avoiding stronger enemies like deathclaws, and you can monitor their journey through a log of events and recall them whenever you choose. When they return, they'll bring back resources or even experience from their travels. Early on, sending dwellers out with minimal gear can lead to some losses, which makes preparation a really important part of keeping your dwellers alive. Speaking of, to improve your vault's population and capabilities, the game includes things like lunch boxes, which function basically as loot boxes. These reward you with items such as caps, weapons, gear, or even new dwellers entirely. These are earned through completing objectives like producing a certain amount of food or building certain rooms, but they can also be purchased. While I didn't feel like the game was strictly pay to win, it does really lean into microtransactions in a way that can slow down your progress a lot if you choose to not engage with it. Without it, the pacing can occasionally feel like a waiting game, especially when trying to gather enough resources or dwellers to unlock certain features. This is kind of bad though, because there has been some concerns with the game recently and people losing their save files, and I'm talking long-term players that have hundreds of hours in a save, and it can be insanely frustrating for those because they invested real money purchases into those saves. I've seen some people, and I don't know if it's changed, they haven't updated their reviews, but they have said they still haven't got their games back. Genuinely, I would be heart-wrenched if I put real world money and that much time into a save and didn't get it back. So yeah, this is kind of like a big thumbs down for Fallout Shelter, I can't lie. On that note, overall, I think Fallout Shelter works best as a casual pick up and play management experience on your phone, not on the PC. It's not particularly deep in terms of complex mechanics, but it's satisfying in short sessions where you gradually build up and expand your vault over time. If you want something to pick up for 5 minutes every now and then when you're just kind of like waiting for something to happen, and don't mind any of the presence of microtransactions, then it can be still a fun and engaging time waster game. However, if you're looking for an in-depth management simulator, this likely won't scratch the itch. Regardless, I did have a lot of fun playing it. In Poco, you play as a clown who's been exiled from the circus after failing to perform their clown duties properly. After falling into a completely new area of the world, you'll encounter a cast of strange and unique characters, each with their own requests for you. By helping them complete their tasks, you'll earn a piece of a rocket ship, which ultimately helps you find a way back to where you came from. Throughout the game, you take part in a series of small but engaging minigames tied to each character's request. These activities can range from cooking to fishing, and each one feels interactive and enjoyable enough to complete. As you progress and you assist more characters, they begin to gather in a central sort of hub area where you can see everyone you've helped along with the parts of the rocket being assembled on a display in the center. This hub acts as a nice little focal point that gives a sense of progression and accomplishment as the world slowly comes together, because you'll constantly run through this area as you're completing different tasks for other people. The puzzles themselves are generally not difficult. In most cases, once I obtained an item, it felt very clear where I should be using it. That said, despite the lack of challenge, the puzzles still felt really satisfying to solve, and the game has a really small map, so it helps keep exploration feeling really manageable. If you missed an item and you need to backtrack, or you've just found an item and you need to go give it to someone, it actually didn't feel like a burden to go do that. There are also moments where your previous actions will influence the world in funny kind of ways. After completing certain tasks or interacting with characters, you might return to them later to find that something has changed as a result. These small reactive sort of like elements help the world feel alive, and it means when you do something, you feel like you're actually impacting the world around you with that. I think one of the standout aspects for me of this game was its visual presentation. The environments are just beautifully hand painted with a distinct artistic style that gives each area a really great feel. The game blends these painted backgrounds with 3D models layered on top for the characters, which just helps them stand out a little bit whilst also seamlessly fitting into the overall aesthetic. This mix of mediums with the 3D characters and the backgrounds just works really well together, and it's just got a great aesthetic. There's also like smaller design details that are like beautiful. For example, the mouse cursor is animated where it changes into a walking animation when hovering over other interactive areas. Whilst on this topic though, identifying interactive elements can sometimes be a little bit tricky. It's not always immediately obvious what is part of the background and what can be interacted with, and the primary way to distinguish this is by hovering the cursor and watching for it to change. That being said though, the game does include this hint system that can actually guide you towards areas of interest, so if you get stuck and you don't know what you're looking for, it kind of helps you aimlessly wandering. Overall, I think this game is likely to be one of the best free games I will ever play, and it's certainly one of my favorites on this list by far. It is ridiculously creative and polished, it's got so much personality packed into every detail, the characters are just funny and memorable, the art style is gorgeous, and the whole thing has this quirky charm to it that made me want to stay in it way longer than its roughly 2 hours runtime. So, the concept of Helltaker is that you're playing as a guy who's had a dream of getting a harem of demon girlfriends and is going to stop at nothing in order to get them. So you'll battle against different enemies in hell, all to make your way towards the demon girls at the end. The way this works gameplay-wise is you have a certain amount of moves you can make as indicated by the number in the bottom left. Every time you move, this number goes down by 1, and you have to make it to the demon girls in the level before the number completely runs out, otherwise you've lost. It's not as simple as getting from A to B though. There are going to be things that block your path, for example enemies in your way that you have to hit twice to kill so you can move past them, spikes on the ground that take 2 of your moves rather than 1, keys you'll have to go out of your way to grab to unlock doors, and more. One of the main things you'll encounter is rocks on the floor that you have to push out your way, and the game turns into a sort of soccer band style puzzle in that regard. The puzzles can actually get relatively tricky, and you will be going over them a couple times to find the right path, but it's nothing too intense. Once you find the demon girls, you can chat with them, get a little bit of dialogue from them, and get a sense for their personality. The girls' character designs are also really adorable, but they're visually unique too, which makes it easy to pick favorites. One aspect that stands out for this game is the tone of the interactions when you're speaking to the girls. Despite the game being built around a harem concept, the correct dialogue options to make sure the girls don't kill you are actually the more wholesome ones, so instead of leaning into more exaggerated or uncomfortable tropes of the genre, the game actually presents these responses or compliments as the right ones to choose, which just makes the game feel a bit more like a satirical take on harem games in general, and it just doesn't take itself too seriously. One of the highlights of the game is a boss fight at the end against a character named Judgment. This sequence introduces a different style of gameplay compared to the puzzle soccer band things before. You're actually placed on a vertically scrolling platform with spikes above and below, requiring you to constantly adjust your position to avoid damage. At the same time as this though, Judgment is attacking you by throwing chains that you have to dodge. Eventually the platform stops scrolling and locks in place, at which point you have to use your kick ability to break the chains on either side, while still avoiding incoming attacks. It's actually relatively tricky, but not so hard that it made me feel frustrated or felt cheaty at all, and it meant that I had a lot of fun with it. Also, before wrapping this review up, I do want to mention the art style. I just think it's insanely cool to look at, and personally I vibe with it a lot. It's very reminiscent of games like Darkest Dungeon with this design in particular, and the whole game gives me vibes of Cult of the Lamb with the hell and cult aesthetics. It's just really cool with the demon looking enemies and the designs, and each demon girl has their own unique personality, with the character design really adding to that. Genuinely just a really polished game overall. I didn't go for it in my time playing, but I do know that there's a secret ending you can go for and lots of other small hidden stuff to find if you want to do that and get all the achievements. If you like little puzzle games and some absolutely banging music, then I definitely recommend giving this one a go. Bloody Hell is a bullet hell Metroidvania style game that throws you into the depths of hell on a divine mission to defeat Satan. You'll play as a bird battling through hordes of demons to do so. There are demons that will absolutely destroy you, however you're gonna have to dip, dive and dodge all of their attacks, all while aiming at them with yours to survive, and let me tell you right now, this game is not easy. One of the first things that I noticed is the pixel art style. It's just extremely detailed, and I know pixel art can be difficult to execute, so hats off to this game because it does a solid job of making its environments and enemies visually distinct. That being said, I do think the environments and enemy designs can feel somewhat repetitive over time, but there is still a noticeable progression in how enemy types evolve as you move deeper into the underworld. For example, you might begin by encountering a flying eyeball that fires a single laser at you, only later to face variations like jewel-eyed enemies that fire multiple beams at you. I think each enemy has different enough attacks, but you'll eventually start to learn and come up with tricks for how to deal with them. But it does also mean that not every enemy is just shooting in the same pattern. Some will make stars with their bullets, and as they land they expand and suck back in. Some will spam loads of bullets at you, these guys were such a pain for me, and some just shoot normally, and so on. As you travel through the dungeons, you'll find these crosses on the ground. These act essentially as your save points. If you've traveled a little while and you haven't found a cross, then you're probably going to start to get real nervous until you find one, because they are your only way of saving. When you interact with one, you can use it to set your respawn point, or you can use it to rest and pray, which essentially heals you back up, but does fully respawn all of the enemies you've killed so far, so you want to make sure you're using this carefully. Or you can also go back to heaven and do some side questy stuff for some other birds, or even hit up the shops to buy stuff. Speaking of shops though, currency in this game is of course bones. You'll collect these throughout the game by killing enemies or destroying pots or rocks and collecting bones from there. These bones allow you to buy upgrades for your bird from the shops. The way that these upgrades work is you can't actually just buy loads of them and then absolutely overpower your bird. Instead, they come in potions of different shapes and sizes, and actually to equip these upgrades, you have to fit them into your grid using an alchemy table. As you travel around Hell, you'll find upgrades to this grid, allowing you to build on it more and more, placing squares wherever you think works best for your potions to Tetris into each other to get the max out of them. I want to specify, these sort of bullet hell games are never usually my kind of game, so I'm definitely definitely not the target audience for this one, but despite that, I still actually had a lot of fun with it. I'm not afraid to admit that I found it a little tricky. It wasn't anything that felt impossible, but enough to make me have to respawn quite a bit, but I do think that's also a trait of this kind of genre, and since I don't play them that much, I do know that it being difficult is because I'm not used to them. With that being said though, I do think you can get a lot out of this game considering it's free. I've seen some people with up to 10 hours in the game, but that does come at the cost of these people tend to note in their reviews that playing it for this long, it does start to get fairly repetitive, and even just in my first hour of playing, I did feel that a little bit. Overall though, a relatively polished, fairly entertaining bullet hell that I'm sure if you're into this genre of games, you'd probably enjoy giving it a go, especially considering it's completely free. Also, if you do end up playing this game and enjoy it, there is a second game coming out. There's no planned release date as of yet, but my word, look at these screenshots for this game. It is a huge upgrade stylistically, and honestly, just looking at it is making me excited, so I do hope it lives up to the expectations. Illusion Carnival is a game that is somewhere between puzzle solving and a bullet hell in terms of dodging enemies' attacks. You'll play as this lost soul who's been turned into a tiny paper boat, and you're stuck in a broken amusement park called Confettia. The whole place used to be fun and cheerful, but now it's just kind of full of weird anomalies that slowly mess with your spirit instead of just killing you. As you play, you go through different carnival-themed areas that look like a pop-up book, solving puzzles and interacting with different characters along the way. So, I want to preface this game with the fact that I really do not think I'm the target audience for it. If I was 15 and into creepypastas again, this game would have been my jam. It really gives off that here's some creepy, weird stuff on the screen just because we can energy, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with these types of games. I'm thinking about like Doki Doki Literature in that regard. I just personally am not a fan of this type of stuff, so I'll do my best to review it fairly despite the game clearly not being targeted towards me. With that, I do want to start with my positives with the game. The character drawings are really stunning. The artist absolutely popped off with this carnival sort of style backgrounds, and whilst I've never seen neither of these shows, nor do I know absolutely anything about them other than having seen images of it pop up every now and then on my For You page, and with fear that I may be attacked by the power of 1,000 suns by a fan base for saying this, the style in both visuals and atmosphere is giving me a mix of somewhere between Has Been Hotel and the amazing Digital Circus, those kind of shows, and please don't kill me if you enjoy those shows and I've got this completely wrong. I don't really know how to describe the style in any other way than that, but I think it really works for the vibe that the game is going for, and I particularly love the character design of the character that we play as. We play as this paper boat, which they wear as a hat, but the dress is also this sort of origami paper boat style dress. I think the level designs are also super cool too. There's like these built up 3D environments made out of 2D paper-esque sort of planes, and the camera moves and weaves between them, and I just think it looks really cool. There's a lot of motifs of hands and eyes, and they're often layered around in a sort of kaleidoscope fashion, with the camera almost dolly zooming to make it disorienting and just visually stunning as well. What I'm trying to get at in a really long-winded way is I just think the star of the show is in the design and the art of everything. That being said, I just think all this creativity that went into the design, building character personalities, the gameplay mechanics and such, it's just let down a little bit by some of the more rather egregious visuals that are consistent and actually meant that I had to stop playing the game entirely because they were just too much. The game opens up with a content warning for flashing lights, and I'm also going to state a content warning once again here for this. I've never once had to care about content warning for flashing imagery for games, and I've played some weird indie games in my time that have a lot going on. Until this game, I really did not vibe with it. Genuinely, the game is egregious for a lot of flashing things in your face that happen so often that it was just not for me. I can somewhat understand that it's kind of the point of this carnival place, that it's supposed to be unsettling and over the top and creepy and in your face, but I do think there's a line where it becomes an unenjoyable experience to look at. For me, the game went over this line, and I think they could have still got their point across whilst also making it entertaining had it not forced some of these moments within it. Like, there's just a ton of glitchy screen moments, things popping up and taking the entire screen, character portraits violently shaking, and so on. Personally, I would have loved the slower camera swings and zooms without all of this, so I could actually appreciate and see the visuals that the artist had drawn for the backgrounds, because with the big shaking text and visual glitches, I actually can't appreciate the scene alone for what it is. Also, whilst we're on the topic of things that were a bit much, there's a lot of motion on the camera when walking or even just standing still. Like, not just a little camera bob, I'm talking about a visually significant amount of camera bobbing up and down. I do get motion sickness, however, I've never gotten motion sickness from games, even with accessibility settings turned off. I can play VR headsets for a while before it gets me, and I'm not terrible for car rides unless they're extremely long. However, this game for some reason got me, and I just have to think it's this camera bobbing paired with the lots of flashy moments. I did look to see if there was any settings to turn this bobbing off, but it doesn't look like there's any settings in the menu full stop for the game. I will say I don't really blame the game, partly because it is free. Should they have thought about accessibility options? I mean, any settings options in general, probably. Am I blaming them for releasing something that's free without it? Not really, it's a free game. I do think toning it down on some of the more out there crazy visuals consistently would really benefit the game though, and I just thought this was something worth mentioning so I can explain why I actually didn't get around to finishing this game entirely, nor did I really get far into it because it was really not a particularly enjoyable experience for me personally. Overall, I think this game really shines on its visual aesthetic and overall atmosphere. I think if you like this sort of thing and don't mind the visuals, by all means give it a go. This is the sort of game that you will know if you're going to enjoy it just by what you've seen on screen now. In DJ Bunny, we play as a bunny rabbit who has left the meadows to pursue our dream of becoming a musician and playing at the local festival. On the bus leaving our hometown, we get a call from our mum, pretty disapproving of our dreams to become a musician. She says that bunnies must stick together and that she's never even heard our music and that we can come back home anytime we want. Regardless, we continue on our journey to become the best bunny DJ known to man. When we get off the bus, we're introduced to this guy called Todd. I've got to say here, the character design in this game is stunning. I love how unique the art style is, and it's unlike anything I've seen before. The artist really popped off with the game and making some unique looking stuff. Even the backgrounds are just stunning with this hand-painted look to them. Anyway, Todd tells us about this groovy beat playing on the bus and asks us to play it again. This is where the game's actual mechanics is introduced to us. So when we play a tune, we get blocks of certain shapes. A grid appears with 2 blue blocks on it, and we have to use our blue blocks to connect these blocks together, Tetrising them in a grid so that we can achieve this. You can rotate the blocks, and you have to use every block that's given to you. You can't just connect the line and still have blocks left over. I personally found this puzzle just the right level of challenging for a game that's definitely presenting itself on the cozier side. Despite this, throughout the game they do actually ramp up the difficulty on these puzzles, introducing things like X's on the grids where you can't place a tile, or at some point in the game they make it so that there's 2 colour blocks you have to work with now, not just blue but pink too. You can only use the pink outline tiles to connect the pink bunny blocks, and vice versa for the blue ones. So you gotta think carefully, because just because you've got the blue tiles correct, it might not be in the most optimal positions for the pink tiles to go in, and you'll have to switch them around. This gets even more harder when the game presents to you moves, so you can only do the puzzle in a certain amount of moves before you have to reset it, meaning you can't be placing down the tiles willy-nilly, rotating them around as you please. You've got to get it right first time, otherwise the tiles come off the board and then you reset. This doesn't add too much of a challenge, but if you're anything like me, then good luck remembering what you have done and what you haven't done before the board gets rewiped. The game is a relatively short one, and alongside writing this review whilst playing it, it came in at just under 30 minutes, so I think a normal playthrough would be around 20 minutes. Despite it being short though, it is most certainly sweet. It's got a little narrative that runs through the game, the environments are cute, and it's just overall a very cozy experience to play. Please Touch the Artwork 2 is a cozy hidden object point-and-click puzzle game that is the 100% free sequel to the first Please Touch the Artwork game. I love that the game itself on the Steam page specifies that it's free with no ads and no in-app purchases, because there are quite a few games I was looking at when making this video that I did decide to pass up on because of how egregious the in-app purchases were. In this game, you play as a skeleton who we can assume is James Esner, as at the start of the game he literally crawls out of his grave. From there, you can travel through different paintings created by the real James Esner, exploring each one and interacting with elements inside them to find hidden objects that people ask you to locate so you can progress to the next area. What I really like about using James Esner's artwork is that every painting feels completely different. They're all very surreal and different in their own way, so the game never feels really repetitive or stagnant in that way. It's always interesting to move on to the next painting and see how the styles change. Personally, I really enjoyed his still life pieces the most because of how vibrant and colourful they were. I actually didn't know who James Esner was before playing this, so everything felt completely new to me, and as someone who studied at an arts university, I felt like this game was definitely targeted towards me, especially since it's essentially like walking through an interactive art gallery. The hidden object format also works really well here because it encourages you to really look closely at every detail in the paintings to find what you're searching for. At certain points you'll come across holes or damage in the paintings that you need to fix. When you do, the game flips you to the back of the canvas where you have to repair it by drawing over shapes without retracing your steps. These puzzles are fairly simple, and while they do become slightly more challenging as you progress, I never really felt stuck with them at all. I also really like this mechanic because it serves as a nice little break from the hidden object gameplay, and it also reinforces the idea that you're inside a framed piece of artwork. It adds this like break the fourth wall element to it to remind you once again these are actual art pieces. Once you repair the back of the canvas, the painting is restored and the object that you were searching for is revealed on the front. Onto the sound design, it's relatively simple but super effective. Each painting has ambient background sounds that help sell the atmosphere, like distant church bells, people walking on cobblestones, and birds or crows in the distance. It does a great job of turning each painting into a realistic soundscape version of that. That being said, on a personal level, I did find some of the soundscapes a little bit too much for me. I can tell the intent was fully to immerse you in the atmosphere, and it does a great job of that, but for me, I did have to take my headphones off during a couple of the levels because it was just a lot. Again, this isn't anything wrong with the game. I think they nail the atmosphere of the paintings amazingly. I just thought I would mention this here for any other neurodivergent folk out there, or for anyone with noise sensitivities for that matter. In the game, there's also a really helpful hint system built in using a light bulb. When you enter a painting that contains an object that you're looking for, the light bulb stays on to let you know that it's in there. If the light is off, you can safely move on without wasting your time searching that painting. This is especially useful in later levels where you might be jumping between several different paintings to find a single object, so it just helps streamline the whole experience and prevents unnecessary backtracking or searching a painting that you know the object isn't in there for. Overall, for a free game, I was really impressed. It's the kind of experience where you can quickly tell if it's going to be for you just by watching this video, and if it looks appealing, then you're probably going to enjoy sitting down and playing through it in one evening. It's not trying to be overly complex or challenging. Instead, it offers a short, immersive experience that feels like exploring a digital art gallery. And that's all the free games I checked out for this video. If there are any games in this video though that caught your eye, I definitely recommend checking them out for yourself, and if there are any other games that you think should be featured on this channel in the future, do let me know down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.